Hey, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. Today, I'm very pleased to have with me as my guest Erik Halverson, who's a partner at K&L Gates. Erik, welcome to the program.
Happy to be here, Richard.
So, Erik, you have one of the more unusual backgrounds I run across, and that is you have an undergraduate degree in looks like physics and material science. Tell me a little bit about how you chose that major and why.
So I ended up at the University of Illinois with the goal as a freshman in college of being a patent attorney.
Oh, interesting.
Um, and so I was looking at the different engineering degrees that existed and uh, toying with the different options that were there. There was biomedical, there was mechanical, there was electrical, computer science, and then this material science thing that I hadn't really heard of much about when I was applying to school. And the way that the course descriptions were set up piqued my interest. It was things you can touch, things that were tangible, mechanisms that were improving society. They were touting, solar panels and battery technology and ceramics and crystals, and all of that sounded very, very interesting. And then the physics department actually had its own engineering flow, and I really enjoyed physics during high school. So I went in with an eye towards physics, and then was figuring out how else I could dabble in the other disciplines. And so this degree kind of created itself for me.
Well, what made you decide you wanted to become a patent lawyer going to college? That's kind of unusual. Did you have a patent lawyer in the family? How did you know about that career?
No patent lawyers in the family, no lawyers ahead of me in the family. I went to a very large high school in the northern suburbs of Chicago,
Uh-huh.
and the high school had a career advisor department.
Huh.
So there were two or three full-time teachers whose job it was to connect 16, 17, 18-year-olds with other people's parents in the community.
Huh.
And so when I was probably a sophomore or a junior, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I had just finished up chemistry, was in the process of starting physics, and really liked the sciences, really liked
Okay.
learning how everything worked. So I went to the career center and said, what can I do with my love of science? They said,
Uh-huh.
you should be an engineer. Like, I don't really know what that means because I was 16 years old. What's an engineer? So they
Right.
matched me up with somebody who was actually at Boeing, and I went to go interact with the engineer for half a day. They spent their entire day designing this little nut or widget for an airplane engine. And I thought to myself, my God, this is the most boring thing I've ever done all day long. I don't know how you do it. This is not for me. So I went back to the career center then, I don't know, next week or something. So what else do you got? This isn't my jam. Find what else is available for
Uh-huh.
a guy who loves science. They said, well, actually, there's somebody here who's a patent lawyer.
Huh.
You go chat with them. And so I went and spent half a day with them. They were a prosecutor, so they were all about getting the patents,
Yeah.
taking the inventions, going to the patent office. And it was really interesting because they got to do a deep dive into the technology for each different project. So one day they would be doing, a patent application for the guy who was coming up with a widget at Boeing. The
Huh.
next day they might be doing a medical device. The next day they might be doing a television screen, something with LCDs. And the next day it might be something software related. And
Huh.
so I thought to myself, this was really interesting because I can keep learning about what's happening, what's developing across the different technologies, but I don't have to do it. I don't need to spend my entire, month and a half or 6 months or 2 years or whatever it is on one project. I get to dabble in a bunch of different projects
Huh.
over my month.
That's so interesting. So when you went to college, then you just wanted to get really as broad of a knowledge as possible because you figured you could use as many different engineering disciplines or science disciplines in your future career.
Yep, it was just about gathering the tools that I would use later on to be able to learn from all of these inventors in my career to help understand what they were doing and translate what they were doing into patent speak.
Yeah,
So as long
interesting.
as I was able to get that kind of baseline knowledge out of school, that's all I wanted.
Well, what about when you get to law school? I mean, law school is obviously very different from, being a patent lawyer, as you know, as I know. What did you think about that? Did you like that part of it?
Law school was terrible and great at the same time. So you're an engineering student, there's always an answer.
Yeah.
Your sole focus is how do I get the answer?
Yeah.
You have a problem set and there is a defined solution at the end of that
Yeah.
problem set, or you're, designing a bridge, or you're figuring out the tensile strength of something, designing a circuit, and there's always a way to do it. And so law school, the first semester of law school was actually really difficult because instead of coming up with the answer, which
Yeah.
I could do, I had a really hard time also doing the other side. Because as you remember in all of those law school hypotheticals, it was, is this a tort? Well, yeah, it's a tort. But you also have to analyze why it might not be a tort.
Mhm.
So after that conclusion, doing the other half of the exam was a struggle for me. Had some very good professors who sat down post exams first semester, walked through things with me and helped kind of correct my path so that as I went into the second semester, I was able to do a much better job. But the transition from getting the answer to responding to a law school exam question was a difficult thing for my engineering.
Makes sense. But then once you got it, then you got the knack of it. Once you
Yeah,
figured it out, yeah.
yeah. Once you experience it correctly one time, the next time is a lot easier.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like the practice of law. The first time you write a brief, it's hard. The second time you write a brief, it's a little bit easier.
Now, during law school, did you then did you actually dabble at maybe other areas of law? Did you think, well, I can do it. I don't have to do patent lawyer. I could, obviously do other things. Did you think about that at all?
I hated all of the rest of it. I really truly did set my heart on patent law from the get go.
Interesting.
The other IP classes were a little bit interesting, the copyrights, the trademarks, but things like tax law, environmental law, real estate law,
None of it
I would
interesting.
take these classes and it just it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
My jam was really how do I get to do my patent work? What do I have to do to get there? And how can I get there as fast as I can?
Studying for the bar must have been a real annoyance then.
It was. It was an experience, and it was the kind of thing that I don't wish upon anybody else ever again. I actually did it twice. I had to study again to take California. Uh,
Yeah.
it's easier the second time, but dabbling in all of the little subjects was
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you obviously became a patent litigator. Tell me a little bit about the transition. I assume you started off as prosecution, or did you just dive into litigation, or how did tell me a little about that career path?
So I started as just a prosecutor. I was prosecuting full time,
Uh-huh.
writing applications, responding to office actions, interacting with the examiners of the patent office. And as time progressed, I got pulled in to help out on a couple of litigation projects,
Uh-huh.
working on contentions and expert reports, things like that. And as I got older, I had to pick one, and I enjoyed the litigation aspect a little bit more.
Huh.
Uh, the prosecution was very structured. It was nice in that you had your defined budget, you had your defined allotment of time that you could spend on any given exercise. That was really what got me into patent law. But the litigation side, where you really got to do an even deeper dive,
Yeah.
so spend a year or two focused on one technology, and then you move on to something completely different, which I know kind of contradicts that initial interaction here. But as I progressed through kind of first, second, third, and fourth year, I realized that the adversarial aspect of litigation was much more my speed.
Huh.
I enjoyed interacting with opposing counsel, trying to figure out how to win, whereas in prosecution, there's less of a win. At
Yeah.
the end of the day, you can always get a patent, but the value of that patent is kind of up in the air. But on the litigation side, there is always one side that wins and one side that loses,
Yeah.
except we settle, which is 95% of the time. Then nobody wins.
So now is your practice 100% litigation, or do you still do some prosecution on the side?
So my practice now is probably 75% patent office litigation, so
Mhm.
PTAB work,
Yep.
25% district court litigation, no more prosecution at all.
I see. Got it. Well, give me a little bit of range of the field of technologies that you've done. I'm sure it's a wide range, but sort of give me a feel if you can.
So I've done everything from medical devices.
Uh-huh.
I've I've spent some time on like IV configurations, dialysis machines, wearable medical devices. I've done autopilot for freight trains, so there's safety controls for 2 mile long freight trains, making sure they don't run into each other. I've spent some time doing quite a bit of signal processing patents.
Hmm.
So how your cell phone works, how the internet works, how Ethernet works, signals getting from one point to another, and making sure that all of the data is arrives appropriately and in a usable form. The one thing I don't do very much of is like drugs. I don't do a lot of pharmaceutical work or heavy bio work. Cells, viruses, and things like that is a little bit outside of the physics materials degree, but anything that is electronics or tangible is well within my wheelhouse.
What's the most complicated technology you've had to wrestle with
Ooh,
as a lawyer?
that's an excellent question. Done some cases that have touched on true 5G cell phone modulation techniques, and the math in that gets pretty heady pretty quickly.
I can imagine.
There are certainly some patents that are high enough level that it's not too difficult, but when you start getting into true matrix multiplication and that level of signal processing, it starts to harken back to the textbook days from college, and you've got to pull out your cheat sheets and your crib notes and whatnot from senior year math class to figure out exactly what's going on.
Yeah, interesting. Well, even though you identified patent law as an early in your life, I mean, what do you think? Did it fulfill your dreams? I mean, are you happy with your career choice? Did you make a good decision?
I love it. Every day I am excited to go to work. I'm excited to do what we do for our patent clients. I love learning the technology. I love interacting with the engineers. And one thing that I really enjoy about the patent bar is it's a small enough community
Yeah.
that people are generally friendly. So while, yes, there's some adversarial aspect to it, everybody really understands that, you might be opposite me today, but there's just as good of a chance that you'll be in a joint defense group or working at the same firm tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so most people are very cordial, very civil, very candidly friendly, which I've gotten the sense from law school classmates and other coworkers that it's not always the case across the board.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that aspect of
Yeah. 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 Well, Erik, it's been a fascinating conversation. I loved hearing your story. I loved how you chose patent law at such an early age and you found something you really love doing.
Absolutely. Happy to chat about it, and hope you have a great rest of the day.
This is Richard Hsu and Erik Halverson. Thanks.